Welcome to Headline Hunting. I'm your host, Joe Ferrara, and joining me all the way from Glasgow, Scotland is Stephen Morocco making his debut here. Stephen, big news over the past 24 hours. Fedor Emelianenko apparently coming back to action. I mean, I don't want to see him come back, to be honest with you, but I'll tell you this, I will watch when he does.
And I think that's pretty much the way everyone is framing it. It's been 3 years since he fought last, and he's getting up there in age. But I think if you ask the average MMA fan if they want to watch something like this, of course you want to see if he's still got it. Time certainly wasn't kind to him in his latter career when he was facing top guys. He obviously went on a couple of wins, but things generally don't get better, the older you get. And but at the same time, it's the same reason we watch Kimbo. It's the same reason we watch Shamrock. We want to see how these guys are going to perform. Fedor still has this aura among MMA fans, and whoever ends up signing him, be it Bellator or UFC, that's what they're going to capitalize on.
Well, this has Bellator written all over it. Do you think this is just a situation where Fedor's like, you know what, the payday is simply too good to refuse?
Well, I'm not an expert in the intricacies of Russian political appointments, but clearly either the money's really good or he was unhappy at doing his job as an ambassador for martial arts in Russia, because he came out and he announced this. Apparently he's not signed to a contract just yet. So, it's just something you can say it's money, we can say it's the urge to compete, whatever it is. It appears he's going to come back, although I have to be a little bit skeptical because a lot of times people from his camp, Fedor himself, he sort of intimated things and then it all ends up being a bunch of smoke, basically. So I'm still a little bit skeptical about whether he's actually going to come back or not. But if he does, I think we'll watch.
You mentioned ambassador. Well, the ambassador of Irish MMA is obviously Conor McGregor, who emerged victorious on Saturday night with the UFC interim featherweight title, defeating Chad Mendes. I mean, what else does this guy have to do to prove the haters wrong? Or is it simply a case that no matter what he does, there will always be opposition?
Well, what he has to do to ultimately prove himself is beat Jose Aldo. And that's a big, big proposition. And it's one that's going to take place probably sometime later this year. And then he'll really, really get a chance to take that ultimate test of whether he's the real deal. He obviously passed a huge hurdle in fighting Chad Mendes, although there's going to be people that have said, Chad didn't have a full camp. But he passed a big hurdle, and he's legitimate as far as I'm concerned.
Jose Aldo right now, what do you think is going through his mind? The fact that Conor McGregor is now the interim title holder. He basically called that title a toy for his friends to show off when he's drinking in Ireland. But at the same time, now you have Uriah Faber as the coach opposite Conor McGregor in The Ultimate Fighter. I mean, if you're Jose Aldo, what do you think is going through his mind right now?
I think he wants to get in there and punch Conor McGregor in the face repeatedly until it starts to bleed. I think that's probably the primary thing going through his mind. I think he wants to get back in there. I think he wants to have the ultimate word, make many millions of dollars in the process. But you can't blame the UFC for putting Conor in versus Faber. He brings an audience, and that's pretty much what TUF has needed in the past 5 years. They've tried a variety of different tactics to up the viewership. They put in Sonnen versus Jones, obvious stunt casting there. They need somebody who can bring an audience, as Conor is that guy. So Jose stands to benefit hugely when he comes back. I don't think he should worry too much about TUF. I think he needs to worry about getting healthy, having a full training camp, and going out there and performing against Conor.
The one guy that can bring an audience to any card in Europe is Michael Bisping. He is headlining Saturday's show in Glasgow, Scotland. He's taking on Thales Leites. Your take on this main event and the overall buzz right now for the UFC in Scotland?
It's hard to gauge the buzz sitting in a hotel room a couple days before the event. And I think everything is going to be kind of measured against the past week, basically. I think we're kind of coming off this sort of hangover, this UFC 189 hangover of such adrenaline and such intensity, and there's 3 events back to back. So it's really hard to gauge what the fans' reception is going to be this Saturday. But I think they're going to turn out. I think it's still an intriguing main event. I expect a pretty classic Michael Bisping fight when he's going to stick and move jab, try to stop the takedown, and Thales is going to spend a lot of the time on his bicycle trying to catch up. That being said, I guess I'm the only one that's picking Thales among our staff, which I find a little bit interesting given the fact that Thales has been on such a huge run. But I think it's one of those events where they're opening up the market, they're getting an exposure, and hoping that they're maybe planting a seed that will grow in the future.
Stephen, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy Glasgow. We'd love to have you back on soon.
Thank you very much.